What up? First things first, Happy New Year. I hope you all managed to find a way to celebrate safely. I know I did. That's right. Passed out at 10 p.m. Yup, didn't even make it to midnight. I knew turning 30 was gonna come with some changes, but I did not expect this rapid decline in my ability to stay up late. At this point, I think I'm gonna just embrace this whole getting older thing. Yeah, I'm just gonna get myself some khaki shorts, a polo, some socks and sandals, and just evolve into my final form. Dad with no kids. But anyway, it's 2022, and I figured I'd start the year off by doing what I do best, making a hyperbolic statement with no evidence to back it up, only to walk it back not even 5 minutes later. So let's go ahead and do just that. So what's my hyperbolic statement? Well, I believe that video games are the highest form of art that humanity has achieved. Yeah, okay, now that I say that out loud, I immediately take it back. Can't say I didn't warn you. Okay, so it's definitely not my place to say what the highest form of art humanity has achieved is, or if there even is one. And frankly, this video isn't even gonna be about me making a case for video games to be considered as some super high art form. There are plenty of videos that already do just that, made by people who are way more knowledgeable about both gaming and art than me. And they do a much better job of explaining things than I could ever hope to do. So I'm just gonna leave that to the professionals. In this video, I really only wanted to talk about my own personal relationship with gaming because it hasn't always been a healthy one. And I recently started playing this game called The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and I can already feel some of those unhealthy habits coming back because this game is starting to take over my life. I don't really know when it happened, but at some point, video games became an addiction for me. That's a lie. I know exactly when it happened. November 11th, 2011. This tiny little video game came out. You might have heard of it. It's called Skyrim. And for all the people who don't actually play video games, this isn't a little video game at all. It's one of the most iconic games of the past decade. Some might say it's one of the most iconic games of all time. It's like me calling Game of Thrones a little TV show that no one's heard about. But anyway, this game, Skyrim, absolutely broke me. When this game came out, I was in college and I was in pretty bad shape psychologically. And so inadvertently, I used it as an escape from my crumbling reality. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I eventually dropped out. And this was all part of the build-up to that happening. Now, there were a few other things / addictions that played a much larger role in my eventual dropping out. But my addiction to video games was definitely a significant factor in this equation. And I'm gonna talk about those other addictions in another video. But for now, I just want to focus on video games. So anyway, like I was saying, Skyrim was probably the first game that I could just disappear into for ridiculously long periods of time. I mean, I'd had a PlayStation, PS2, Xbox, and Xbox 360 growing up, so I'd played some of the classics like Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Midnight Club, GTA San Andreas, Halo, Halo 2, Halo 3, etc. And of course, my favorite games were the FIFA games. Look, I know that EA bad is the general consensus amongst gamers these days, but this was a long time ago. I was a kid, soccer was, and still is my favorite sport, and it had my name in it. FIFA. Dude, I pretty much thought these games were literally made for me. But anyway, the point is that I'd played games that had the ability to consume me for extended periods of time before. But for one reason or another, i.e. school, friends, soccer practice, etc., I could never really sink 6 to 12 hour periods of gaming in one sitting. But that all changed with Skyrim. All of a sudden, I was committing entire days to playing this game, only taking breaks to eat, sleep, and use the bathroom. Now, what I'm about to say is extremely unflattering, embarrassing, and just downright shameful, but I feel I must impress upon you the severity of this addiction. So at the time, I was living with 3 other dudes who all wanted to play this game as much as I did. So the only logical thing to do was to evenly divide the time that we were each allowed to play. And so we decided that we would each take 3-hour shifts, at the end of which we would relinquish control of the Xbox to the next gamer in line. And this strategy ended up working really well. But then all of my roommates remembered that they had lives. They had friends, obligations, group meetings, classes, assignments, parties, and other responsibilities to tend to. You know, college. But I wasn't fazed by any of that. In my head, I was like, look, you guys can go be cool dudes, hanging out with your friends and partying and meeting new people and getting good grades and graduating from college or whatever. But me, I'm the Dragonborn. I gotta save Skyrim from the evil dragon Alduin before he wipes out entire races of humans and elves while also fending off an imperial invasion. So you can keep your books, friends, degrees, and bright futures. I got fictional people to save. And so by the end of January, I was basically taking all of my roommates' shifts. But it's not like any of them even cared because, again, they were outliving their lives. And once I beat the game, I had this irresistible urge to fill the gap that Skyrim had left behind. But there weren't that many games that had stories and worlds that were as captivating to me as Skyrim's. And so I fell into online multiplayer games like Call of Duty, games that I could just play repeatedly over and over without them ever really ending. And over the next 10 years, I allowed this addiction to gaming, along with my other addictions, to derail my life over and over again whenever things would get difficult. Now, about 4 years ago, I made a conscious decision to start addressing some of these addictions. Now, this is a side note, but I think it's important to clarify that even with that conscious decision, I still repeatedly fell into the holes that I had consciously decided to avoid. And on multiple occasions, I was resolved to stay in those holes. But again, thanks to the people around me, I was continuously allowed the opportunity to work my way out of them. I just don't want it to sound like I made this decision and never looked back. Oh no, I looked back at every possible junction and would have kept going back if I were left to my own devices. And I still look back, even to this day. Part of the reason I'm making this video is because I'm currently doing just that, but I'll get to that later. For now, I'll just say that one of the addictions I wanted to address 4 years ago was my addiction to gaming. And long story short, I no longer really play the types of games that never really end. And sure, part of this is probably due to that decision, but also part of it I think really just comes down to my not enjoying those types of games as much anymore. Who knows, maybe I'm burned out from playing games like Call of Duty on an almost daily basis for years. But yeah, even some of my old favorites like FIFA, I've largely stopped playing. So the addiction is mostly managed, right? Wrong, because even though I don't really play those types of games anymore, the games that do end, you know, the ones with stories and worlds that captivate me as deeply as the story and world in Skyrim, still pull me right back to that 4-person basement suite that I was living in 2011, ready to forego all responsibilities I have to my actual real life and just throw myself into whatever video game world will allow me some modicum of escape, knocking out 6 to 12 hour sessions at a time without even flinching. And that brings me back to this game, The Witcher 3, because oh my goodness, I want to drop everything for the next month and do nothing but play this game. And that's actually the reason I'm making this video right now, because I'm actively trying to fight off the urge to do just that. The difference this time is that a lot of those other addictions that I've been talking about aren't currently afflicting me. Again, mostly thanks to the people around me, but now also thanks to the process of making these videos. But previously, whenever I get to play these intensely captivating games like Uncharted 4 or God of War or the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I would still be dealing with those addictions. And so I'd always end up immersing myself completely into these worlds while I was at my lowest points. And this is part of the reason why I made that aggressive statement at the beginning of the video about video games being the highest form of art that humanity has achieved. I was definitely letting my own experience with these games get in the way, because for me, personally, after I would emerge from being immersed so deeply in those worlds, I would always feel this inexplicable, irresistible desire to get away from my aforementioned addictions. It's almost like making that decision 4 years ago started drawing me away from the never-ending online multiplayer games that I could sink hundreds of hours into and never feel fulfilled, and instead started drawing me towards these video games that I could completely immerse myself into for a time, but would ultimately pull me out of these holes that I kept digging myself into after I'd finished them. I mean, the best example I can give of this is when I recently played Cyberpunk 2077. A game that was coincidentally made by the same studio that made the game that I'm currently obsessed with. Now, I need to explain something about how I play these games before I give this example. So, for whatever reason, I can't disassociate myself entirely from my character whenever I play these games. And what I mean by that is, I basically play these games as if I, Thief Badaki, was the one operating in whatever world that character is in. So for example, you know how one of the main reasons people love Grand Theft Auto is because you can pretty much do whatever you want with little to no consequence? You can run people over, you can get into fistfights with random civilians, you can blow things up if you want, you can pretty much steal any car you see, etc. Yeah, I can't play the game like that. If I'm doing a mission in GTA and I accidentally run over a civilian or something, I'm restarting the whole mission. And I take this to an annoying extreme. It's annoying even for me. I won't sprint through a city if all the NPCs are walking, or jump around in a cutscene where people are talking, because that's not what I would do if I was actually there. Basically, I don't always treat these games like a game where I get to completely let go of my personality or morality traits. Now, these games all involve violence, so there's obviously some level of disassociation. But I've already gone too deep into this explanation, and I can make an entirely separate video about this altogether. So basically, all I'm saying is that for whatever reason, I feel a type of connection with whatever character I'm controlling in these games that doesn't allow me to do certain things in those worlds that I wouldn't do in this one. But anyway, back to Cyberpunk. So basically, I was playing this game that same way, where I inserted myself into the main character's story. Now, I'm about to spoil the ending, so if you're still planning on playing the game, go ahead and skip this next part. But long story short, the game has multiple endings that your decisions throughout the game impact and that you get to decide. In the story, your character is slowly dying and you have to go on this big climactic final mission to try to save yourself. You have several options as to how you want to go about completing this mission that all involve a significant amount of risk to yourself and to the people you formed relationships with along the way. But there's an alternative option. You can forego this final mission and actually just take your own character's life. And the game does an incredible job of explaining and justifying this decision within this world. I don't want to butcher it because this is a very serious topic, so if you get the chance, go check it out yourself. But one of the main arguments here centers around the question of why should these people that you've come to know and love risk their lives for you? What right do you have to ask them to do that? Is your life more important than theirs? People are going to die on this mission to save your character. So wouldn't it be in everyone's benefit to not go through with this mission, even if it means your character will eventually die? If you give them the option, of course they're gonna say yes, because they're good people and they're your friends. So shouldn't I just take the option away and just accept my inevitable fate? Again, I didn't do it justice, but this was an important element of the discussion that you have with yourself. Now, in my turning 30 video, I mentioned something. It was brief because I didn't want to go too deep into it, but I'll expand a bit here. Basically, I said this. I couldn't disassociate from this, take a step back, and realize the cycle that I was caught in. It was everything I could do just to make it to the next day. Because trust me, there were times where I didn't think I would, and there were times where I didn't even want to. Well, this was one of those times. Like I said, I was playing this game at my lowest, devoting 12 to 14 hours a day to it, running away from my actual real life while succumbing to my various addictions. And again, this was after a decade of trying to get myself out of these cycles. I was tired and I was beginning to lose hope that I would ever overcome my problems. And who was bearing the brunt of my failures? Was it me? Or was it the people around me that continued to support me? After each failure, I'd make the same promise to get better, only to end up in the same situation 6 months later. If I'm exhausted by this cycle, then they must be as well, right? And so the justification from the game rang true for me. Is my life so important that these people must continuously work to support it while I offer them nothing but empty promises in return? What right do I have to ask them to do this? If I give them the option, of course they're going to choose to do it because they're good people and they're my friends and family. So maybe I should take away that option and relieve them of this never-ending responsibility. And so in the game, I went through with it. I took my own character's life, and I felt justified in doing it, like it was the noble option. And I think I would have kept feeling that way if the game ended right there, but it didn't. What I didn't count on were the ending credit scenes, where you have to watch everyone who played an important role in your character's life leave you a message about your decision. And they were all pretty hard to watch, but there was one response in particular that absolutely devastated me. There was an in-game character named Judy, and I remember a huge reason I wanted to play this game in the first place was because I was watching someone else play it on YouTube, and they were making all these decisions in her storyline that I disagreed with and that ended up hurting her. And I just wanted to play so that I could do it differently and hopefully help her out. And her video response to my character's death was... I can't really put it into words, but it absolutely broke me. And I cried a lot. I couldn't believe that by the end of this game, I had completely forgotten why I wanted to play this game in the first place, which was because I wanted to help her. And here I was watching a video making it very obvious that not only had I failed to do that, but I'd actually hurt her worse than that dude I was watching on YouTube did. I couldn't believe that I'd made the decision that led to this. I couldn't believe that I clicked the button that made my character, again, a character that I can't completely disassociate from, take their own life. I couldn't believe that I'd gotten to a point where I could actually consider something like this. I never thought throughout my entire life that I could actually seriously give thoughts like this any real consideration. But here I was, having moved past the consideration into vicariously going through with it. And having to face that fact, even in a video game, shook me to my core. It absolutely devastated me for a long time. And it's still difficult to process when I think about it even now. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that everything's all better now after this moment, and that I don't still occasionally have those thoughts. They still cross my mind. But so does that message from Judy. Every time. It's always there. And so yeah, that's the personal experience behind my hyperbolic statement about video games being this high art form. I've watched loads of TV shows and movies that involve characters that contemplate and go through with these types of decisions. And they have all been powerful in their own right, and I am not trying to take that away. But for me to actually be the one to decide it, to actually press the button that leads my character to do something like that, I don't know, man. That hit different. I get that all types of stories allow you to, on some level, vicariously experience things that you may be disconnected from in your day-to-day life. For example, we all remember how we felt about what happened to Ned Stark at the end of season 1 of Game of Thrones. But in my opinion, video games take that vicarious experiencing to another level by putting the controller in your hands and having you make the decisions for this character that you've invested in. Think about your favorite character from a movie or TV show and how happy or frustrated you get when they make decisions that you agree or disagree with. Now imagine that you're the one making those decisions for them. Now the responsibility for those decisions is on you. You're not just observing from this pedestal where you get to see the entire picture surrounding this character. You're in the thick of it. You're not looking at the whole table. You are on the table experiencing what that character is experiencing in real time. What do you do now? Can you be as harsh or critical about their decisions? I don't know, man. But again, all I can really say is that video games have the same ability as any other artistic medium to evoke powerful emotions within us. But to put them all on a scale or hierarchy, I think, at least for now, is counterproductive. And so I apologize for my egregious earlier statement. Plus, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I am obsessed with Game of Thrones. I think I've already brought it up like 5 times in this video. Yes, Cyberpunk 2077 impacted me profoundly, but so did GOT. And I can't tell you which one impacted me more or which one was more important to me. All I know is that they both hit different in different ways for me. But I don't know. That wasn't even the point of this video. What was it again? Oh, right. The Witcher. Wow. Okay, so basically all I'm trying to say is that this is the first time that I'm playing a game that has the same appeal to me as something like a Cyberpunk or God of War or Final Fantasy, that I'm actively trying to disallow from taking over my life in the same way that those games did. And even though those games are partially responsible for getting me out of those holes that I kept digging myself in, I still indulged in them like a straight up addict, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I guess in the end, this is all really just a testament to why I want to keep making these videos, because this is the first time I feel like I can play a game like this without it completely taking over my life. And that's a cool feeling, because I pretty much thought that after I finished Cyberpunk, I just have to stop playing video games altogether because I can't play them responsibly. But if I can play these games without, you know, completely abandoning my actual real life, then I don't have to do this cold turkey and cut them out completely. And I can actually see a path to reestablishing a healthy relationship with video games. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for this one. If you made it this far, thank you so much for hearing me out. This turned into a ridiculously long script. My camera died halfway through filming it. I swear I only wanted this to be like a 10-minute video tops, but then I had to go full TMI like I always do. So yeah. Sorry about that. In any case, I hope you have something that can impact you deeply and profoundly to live the life that you envision for yourself. It's not always a fun experience, but in my opinion, it's usually worth it. But anyway, with that said, I wish you all the very best going forward. Take care of yourself. Happy 2022, and I will see you in the next one. Peace, and be easy.